Hello, mate. How's it going?
I'm good. It's not going to matter for me, but your face is pixelated. Like the entire image is quite low quality, but it won't matter for me.
Oh,
How's mine?
you are a tad pixelated as well. Just a minute. Just gonna stuff that in the
Let's
corner
change
there.
it to performance. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I like working from these big old buildings. These are lovely.
Oh yeah, that's not your place, is it? I
No,
just noticed.
this is not my house. No, definitely not. How's your
I
finger? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It stopped pulsing now. It's sucked. I was moving this around so I could have the Christmas tree in the background
Yeah.
and kind of sit up. And literally, this stupid arm, my finger was in the middle of these two areas here, and
yeah.
I
Just
pulled
pinched
it
it.
up. The whole spring just went like that and just pinched it. Not nice.
Can you do me a favor? Can you turn your MacBook a little bit to your right, I guess, just so you're more in the center?
Like this.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Cool. What I might do as well is I'm just going to set my phone up to record,
Okay.
and this time it might actually send because it won't be 4K.
I think that works well. I'm just going to check my outputs and make sure they're working all right.
Yeah, just double check that my volume's okay. I've been messing around with it a bit.
You sound
Trying
great.
to-
You sound really good. You sound
Good.
better than last time.
Yeah, so I've put the pop shield back on
Yep.
because I'm kind of slurry and shit. So,
Nice.
so I've been noticing like quite a lot.
Those pops. Yeah, pops
So
and clicks.
Yeah, so I've put that back on. I've angled it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So instead of talking upwards, so you can actually still see my face a little bit.
Do you know what? I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to tweak this a bit so that I fall more in the middle. There we go. So how's your week going, man?
It's going well. Different house news.
Yeah.
I started pulling away some more wallpaper in my bedroom,
Right.
and I've noticed in the past the walls are completely flat, and then some areas they go kind of really upwards and out of alignment, and
Right.
kind of just really rough. And when you're feeling the wallpaper, you can feel like almost like they've just wallpapered over brick, that kind of feeling.
Okay.
So I pulled that wallpaper off, and it's all like fresh plaster, and then it stops and turns into basically just a wall of filler in the corner of the room, like
God's
literally
sake.
what white like wicks filler the whole fucking wall. So I looked into it a bit more, found some like damp areas as well. I think there's a big hole in the side of the building somewhere, or a crack or something letting in water. And he's just been filling it every couple of years just to try and hide the problem.
Yeah, you need to skim that back. You need to remove all the plaster, remove all that filler, chase it back, find out
Yeah.
what's causing the upset, and fill that, because that's going to turn into a bloody nightmare.
Yeah, so I've managed to get into my garden now, which I've never been able to do. I
Yeah.
don't have access to it. And I got the neighbor who rents out the place next door, which is empty. He let me in the back, so I can now see up, and there's like some pretty decent cracks, some
Right.
areas where weeds are growing through the house, like on the outside, so they need to be pulled out. Luckily, they're all lower than my floor,
Right.
which means they're a problem for downstairs, even though I should be paying for it because I'm a freeholder.
Right. Okay.
But they probably won't bother with that. But more importantly, further up, there's cracks, which again is going to be one of those things where it's the opposite. It's like my problem, and they won't worry about it because it's
Yeah.
not affecting them yet. So I got to look into that from the outside first, really, before I start dealing with the inside. And also, it's the room that I'm living in. It's like the bedroom. So I need to really get another room finished before I can actually really tear into that.
When you're starting these little projects in your mind's eye, it's I guess it's different for me, because I've got, so my wife drives continually the improvement of the house, and if it was up to me, I might struggle to find that motivation. I've always been more interested in doing things like, working on my computer, working on servers, working on work, as opposed to working on DIY and house stuff. And I guess that's changed as I've gotten older and I've gotten better at doing it. But what is it that you draw on to keep you motivated? How is it why bother is what I'm trying to say. Why bother?
I think it's because this room is like 95% finished, and it's fantastic. I love it, apart from like coving and
Yeah.
a bit of wall paneling and some skirting boards. And the rest of the house is still like Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's such a crack den. and I just can't deal with it. You know, it doesn't look good. The bedroom, everything just feels dirty, like it's constantly dusty because there's so much like of the walls coming off. I'm constantly picking at wallpaper. I can't leave a room alone. Like
Yeah.
every single room has now got ripped off wallpaper, which doesn't look good at all.
Why do you think it is? Because I think it's guys in particular, and I know there are some girls
Maybe.
that will be like this, but why do you think it is? Because we know we've both got friends who live in places that really could do with some attention. And
Yeah. I don't know what it is. That's a good point. Maybe it's more of like a logical brain. I think just some people have like more of an engineering. No, it's more.
but you would think it was logical. I know, we know. Okay, so we know a guy who lives in a flat still, and yeah, sure he's renting, but he could. There's no reason why he can't do that place up. And I think I love him. I think he's a great guy, and he's an engineer. So I don't think that it's a logical thing. I think it's what else? What is it? I don't know. Maybe it's just laziness. Maybe it's lack of willpower. Maybe it's because they can't justify it. They don't see the value in making your house look beautiful.
I don't think that's it. I think some people have their priorities set, and I think money's a thing that you got to think about quite a lot, and you're determined to buy your own place, I don't think he wants to invest in somewhere that is going to lose money. Like he could spend $1,000 making that look amazing.
That's a good point.
And then that's another $1,000 out. And if you're only saving up a deposit of 10 grand, that's 10% of your deposit you've put down just on stuff you're not going to get back. Also, the landlord should be paying for it if it's serious. So, and also if he works a lot, so he's not going to be around that much. That's what I reckon it is. If it was different, if he was investing his money into stocks and things that like his money could go somewhere else and make more cash, and he was living in that full time and he was happy renting, then yeah, I'd say, do it up. But since it's just to buy like a medium place to be.
Do you think people who haven't got a lot of money should be thinking about stocks and shares? Because I'm not convinced they should.
I'm thinking about it, but there's priorities, isn't there? So I'm like a massive fan of finances and like working out where you should put your money. And there's so many videos online that tell you from rich people, like the ultra rich, telling you that you should do this, this, and this, and this. You should put 100 grand to this, 100 grand to this. And it's like, that's not possible.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, you should put 10 grand into this, 10 grand. That's not possible. For me, like my priorities are have an emergency fund so I don't have to go into debt when something bad happens to the house. Make sure my pension is being topped up more than it should be. If I can then start paying, maybe not right now, but when the market goes back to normal, start paying 10% more of my mortgage off than I have to. And then I want to start putting £50 a month, start by putting £50 a month into stocks and shares, something safe, but also kind of not worry too much, like S&P 500 or something.
Yeah.
Through Vanguard.
That's a good idea. I've got a personal pension thing. It's a SIP, and about 6 or 7 years ago when I was self-employed, or a little bit less than that, actually, about 5 years ago when I was self-employed, I was contributing quite a lot to that. But that has turned. I was also quite willing to put money into quite volatile markets, and the return on investment has been fantastic. It's been way better than just saving. It's been way better than bonds and a plain vanilla pension. It's been remarkable. I haven't contributed to that particular one in maybe 4 years, but I need to get back on it. I'll do it in the new year. Actually, that'd be one of my New Year's resolutions, is to start paying more into that, because the way that I see it and the way that it's been explained to me is that if I want to live really comfortably when I retire and draw a pension that's equivalent to what I'm earning now, actually I can afford to do that. And it's funny because there's that saying that the best time to start saving is right now, and it's true for no matter when what environment you're in, no matter what time of your life you're in. And I think that's the best way to do it, is to do it now, while you're not thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think if I could do anything, go back in the past and change anything, I would start investing like 10 years ago, because compound interest is nuts. Like there's a compound calculator that you can get on the internet, and it's ridiculous. You can have, if you save, the example is ridiculous, but if you save £1,000 a month £1,000 a month into stocks and shares. It's something like, if you start now and you do it for 15 years, you'll have like £1 million in the bank, and you would have only added something like 400 grand, because it's just like with the compound interesting. Whereas if you started 10 years ago, so 25 years from when you're 10 years younger, you'd have like 2.5 times more, like an unbelievable amount more. And because you waited for 10 years, you messed it up. And it means you can retire. If you can save £1,000 a month into stocks and shares, you can retire in 15 years, like handsomely. It's crazy. Do you pay off your mortgage? You've got a pension. Do you do anything else to kind of help yourself in the future, or in stocks at all?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'd like to think so, but I think I'd need to find a stock or a share that I really liked. And I think the risk of me just evaporating all my money is probably quite high, and that would make me a bit concerned. So I'd rather put it into something that was designed to be a pension pot, as opposed to something that would, even though they might be relatively high risk, and I'm nowhere near smart enough in this area to speak to it with any degree of expertise. But financial advisors that I have spoken to in the past, they were saying that the time to be investing and saving is right now, while you're still, because you and I are both in our early 30s now. But when he was telling me that advice, I was 24, 23, and I didn't have the capital to invest. It just wasn't possible to put any kind of reasonable amount of money to one side. I was living not quite hand to mouth, but it might as well have been. I couldn't have saved. I couldn't have had an emergency fund. It would have been impossible for me to, on a single income, to get a mortgage. And in 35, probably 35 years time, when my mortgage is paid off, even let's assume that we continue just paying out at the base rate and we don't overpay, which is something that we have talked about doing. That I'm going to be probably deep into my 60s by the time I can retire, and I think the retirement age, actually, can you look up what the retirement age is in the UK at the moment? I think it's like
75.
Oh, it's 75. Jesus. Okay, so I mean, that's 40 years away. If I've paid off my mortgage, then great. That's going to be a load of money off a month we don't have to worry about. I'd like to think that we're going to do that, and I'd also like to think that we're going to, what I mean is we're going to pay off early, because I think we've both got the ability to. That said, do I think that we're going to start investing in other things? Probably. I mean, I'll definitely continue my SIP. I think if I've got capital where I can invest directly in stuff, what I'd like to do as I get older is start investing in businesses. That would be fun. I think that would be a challenge, but it might actually work out. And I think I'd probably just do that, but just by, I don't know, I'd need to, I could buy my way into, all sorts of companies and take a percentage. But there's a guy, Pete, who you and I both know, and his audio company's doing really well comparatively to where it was a couple of years ago, and he's just finished doing another round of trying to raise capital and funds to help continue making valve amps, but he's got to give away 50+% of his company. And so if I'm going to be involved in a company like that, I think what I'd much rather do is spend some time in the company to understand its ethos, understand the market, understand what it's going to try and sell. I don't think I'm anywhere near smart enough to make those kind of judgment calls now. I don't think I've got the time or the resources or the effort or I don't think I've got the wherewithal. I honestly don't think I've got the wherewithal right now to judge whether a company's going to do well. I mean, I do relatively well functioning inside of a business, and if there's clear leadership coming down, then yeah, I guess so. But I guess it makes it easier. I tend to be the sort of person who is more comfortable working in the business as opposed to on the business. That said, I do an awful lot of work where, it's pro bono, and the ROI isn't completely self-evident at the time. Like there's a load of work that I used to do it for free, just to hope that I could get my foot in the door and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to actually investing money in businesses or buying stocks and shares, I mean, who bloody knows? I'm just worried that I'm going to evaporate all my money and make a bad decision. And if I've spent 15 years or 20 years or 30 years earning a savings pot, then do I really want to take that risk at that point? Probably not. I'll probably become more risk adverse. And so I'm actually more likely to, invest in things that are more stable across time, like gold or bonds or something, government bonds. I don't know. That's about all I could see.
What I would say you should do And I think you should do this as a test. If you can afford, because they always say, like, if you're unsure about something, don't invest more than you are happy to lose.
Yeah.
So S&P 500 has been going for 100 years now, I think, almost, or has been. And the growth year on year averages out as 10%, which is nuts. Which means year on year, even though you have massive drops, you have bigger inclines that show a 10% growth. If you on the Vanguard website, and everyone says Vanguard because they have the lowest fees, they do blended funds, and they will ask you what kind of risk you want, and they'll choose for you. And the minimum you could do is you can do a one-off payment of £200 a month, £200, and just put whatever you want in after that, or you can start it with £50 a month. If you can afford it, I would say put £100 a month in every month for a year into just S&P 500 on its own, or one of their funds, and see what happens. And if you don't mind losing, what's that, like £1,200 after a year, and when I say lose it, I mean it might drop 100 quid. You know, you're not losing all of it. Just keep doing it and see what happens, because I think you'd be surprised.
Is that what you've done? Have you done this?
I will do. I can't afford £100 a month at the moment, or
Right.
£50 a month for that matter. I'm going to start my 33rd birthday just as a target.
Yeah.
I need to get these rooms kind of made up properly first. But yeah, I'm going to start putting £50 a month in, and then I'm going to try and make that £100 a month after a year. Mm-hmm. And if I can get my career up to a point where I can afford £200 a month, I think that means that I can retire in not for much money, but if I wanted to, I think it would take 20 years, and I could retire just on that amount with the accrued interest every month to have £2,000 a month taken out.
So it's interesting you say that. So one thing that I've noticed about some of these guys online who talk about things that you should be doing with your money and shouldn't be, I think it's a really efficient route to market to actually upskill. And if you want to earn more money. If you want to make money, and I think you can do that. I know there's a few individuals that I do know that will do investing, for example, and my brother's someone actually who's talked about this, and he'll talk about putting money in this XYZ stock or this XYZ fund or whatever. And I think, well, actually, knowing you as an individual, it'd make much more sense for you to just focus on, a couple areas of you as an individual and what you can do, what your skill set is, and go out to the job market and just farm yourself out, get promoted a few times, and before you know it, you'll be on 60, 70, 80, 100 grand a year. And you could do that, and that's well within your ability to do that. So you can, and that's what I would say would be a better way to make money, because more often than not, if you want to save for the future, it's not just money that you need to get working for you. It's you need to get working for you, and it's your personal development you need to get working for you. And this is something I'm a big fan of. I think if you can set your trajectory up so that you're constantly climbing, and if you've got the mentality to accept failure when it happens, but to, they say pain is change fuel. If you can accept the pain of having to look inside yourself and think, well, okay, well, I need to be better in these key areas. Maybe it's mathematics, maybe it's computer science, maybe it's whatever your business is of choice, whatever your temperament is aligned to, whatever you can do natural, whatever your natural affinity is, whatever your vocation might be. If you're lucky enough to find your vocation, work on getting a higher paying job in that space. And I think that makes much more sense, because then you're actually increasing your income today, right now. What do you think?
No, yeah, 100%. I think if you want to make more money, the number one way of doing it right now is making sure your outgoings are as low as they can be, but then also you need your earnings like as high as they can be. And if that means you have one main job that pays you as much money as you can possibly make, and constantly shopping around to get another job that pays more and more, you need to be doing something that's not that you can write tax against. So if you're freelance and you can write code, or you can do photography for lots of money, and you can write a car against it, so you don't pay you take tax off, so you're not taxed. You get tax rebates like I used to. When I did the film stuff, I was only making like $2,000 a year on it, because I was doing it really small amounts, but I managed to write off all of my tax for some of my normal job because I had a car. Everything that modifications and everything I wrote off on tax and said it was maintenance. All the camera equipment that I enjoyed spending money on, I'd write that against my tax. My laptop, my phone, all would go on it. Phone bill, I think 25%, 25% of the fuel for the car for the whole year went against it. And it meant that every year I'd get a tax rebate of like £1,000, £2,000. So I'd actually make £4,000 a year, which is nuts. And I paid the tax guy 300 quid for doing that. So that was amazing. And I think, so you want to make your earnings, like knowledge is money, as much as possible. Then it's where you put that money, because you don't want to just spend all your money on things you like.
Yeah.
Because, if I was making 10 years ago, if I made 100 grand a year or 50 grand a year, 100% I would have wasted it all on cars and holidays. And I'd probably have still bought a house when I did now. Like I would have had 10 years of just buying Porsches. Or something unbelievably stupid.
But some cars can retain their value, so you might have actually been on something there. You might have bought a car that's worth, God knows how much. Yeah,
maybe air-cooled classics, something like that.
Speaking of things that make loads of money, we buy vodka, we buy whiskey, we buy bottles of whiskey, like limited edition whiskey as a savings thing. So you hear about people buying bottles of wine,
and barrels of whiskey as well.
Oh, I don't know if we can buy a barrel, but what we try and do is every single year we try and buy a moderately expensive bottle of whiskey, a few hundred, it's more than 100 quid, but 400, 500, £1,000, whatever. And we do this hoping that in 20 odd years time, hopefully when my son grows up, he'll have something there that's worth a bit of money, that's accrued more value than just interest alone in a savings pot. And we started looking at the Macallan. They did a 007 range recently.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh my God. I found there was one bottle that sold at auction it was in excess of £20,000, and it was one bottle.
Nuts.
And I just think that's insane, because I don't know how much they were actually selling for. I think it was only a couple grand, but because it was a limited edition James Bond 60th anniversary limited run, and of course Daniel Craig's just killed off Bond, it was just insane amounts of money. And of course, no one will drink them. They'll just keep changing hands forever, probably, until someone drops one by accident, or they do get pissed and drink them all.
That's nuts. I didn't know you could buy a whiskey bottle and have it go vintage. Oh, I guess it's vintage at that point.
Well, that's the thing.
Like
it wasn't.
Classic car.
It's It was just a limited edition Macallan run of whiskey. It wasn't anything more.
What, so like
single
came
cask
out that year?
Yeah. I don't know how long it had been. I need to look it up, but I don't know if it was a vintage one. But they were doing limited for every decade of Bond. They were doing a limited run of single cask whiskies, and 20 grand for a single bottle. And if you've only paid 3 or 4, again, I don't know how much they sold for individually. I think it's about that. Then that's ridiculous. You can quadruple your money in no time at all, the same day, which is just tremendous.
That's nuts. Whiskey. So saying whiskey and investing, me and Tom were talking about this last week. So people invest in whiskey while it's like maturing. So you can buy like a share in a barrel of whiskey as it gets made, and then it gets sat in a barn or sat in some fucking rental place.
Yeah, a sherry oak barrel
for 20 or 30 years. And then the idea being is when that matures and they sell it, you get a cut of the percentage of profit.
That is really interesting.
That's a real thing.
You're gonna have to send me some links to that, because
I'll try and find it. Yeah,
that's piqued my interest.
It.
And see, this is the same guy who hasn't got a lot of money and who won't clean his shower because he's renting it, so why bother? I think, for God's sake.
He's on a mission at the moment to save up for his house.
Well, fair play to him, man, and more power to him. God bless him. God bless him.
He'll smash it. I reckon. Give it another 6 or 7 months. Let the recession disappear a bit or calm down.
Yeah.
And hopefully housing prices will drop enough, and hopefully he'll be able to save up enough and buy it when it's super low.
I hope so. He deserves a place. He really does. I mean, there are loads of people who do, and
everyone deserves a house.
Yeah. Well, there are some people who I hate who I don't want houses.
No, same.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I can't think of a single person I don't want.
I can tell you someone who was okay. So there's a reason why I'm going to tell you this story. So about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe it's more than that. Maybe 10 years ago, I was mugged. I was walking home with a friend of mine, coincidentally called another Tom, and we'd been out drinking, and I wasn't too drunk, but anyway, it was pitch black, and we were walking home. We were quite close to his house, and this homeless guy, smelled homeless at least, walked up to us, brandished a very pathetic looking knife, and stole my coat from me, and it was a horrible experience, really awful. And there was a moment when he was taking I had a North Face coat, so I was really pleased with it, and I was taking it off, and I went, "Here you go, you fucking knob," and anyway, we called the police, and police turned up, didn't find the guy. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, I saw the same guy being arrested for shoplifting in a Tesco's near where I live. And I saw him by fluke. I walked in and I spotted this prick, and I said to the arresting officers, I said, "Hey, listen, this guy's connected to, he assaulted me. He mugged me and my friend, and you need to make sure that you take my name and number down because he's linked to this other case. He's wanted for it." And so they did. They took my name and number down. Anyway, they got back to the station and they released him before they bothered to read the notes. Anyway, so this guy got loose again. I then got a call from a constable sometime later, and he said, "Mark, you need to come down to the station. So we've recovered your coat. We found it." And I couldn't believe it. And the only reason why they knew it was mine is because I'd written my name. I'm one of these guys, if there's a label on your bag or your coat for your name and your number, you write it down. Because if you lose stuff, it'd be nice if someone returned it.
That worked out.
He found my name and number. They returned it. Or they said, "We found it." And I thought, great. So I went to the police station and they said, "Look, we've got some news for you as well. You can have it back if you want, but the guy's dead. He died. He's homeless, and he was living in Bath, and he died, and we found him, and your coat was in some of his things. Do you want it back?" And I thought, God, do I? So yeah, that was pretty toasty. Didn't want to wear that coat ever again, knowing he'd probably done smack in it or God knows what. But anyway, did
you take the jacket?
No, I said you can burn it or do whatever you want with it. I said I'm sort of over it now. I'm over that. There's only so much blood that I'll tolerate washing off a garment. But
yeah,
disgusting. But anyway, the reason why I was telling you that was because I think, there are some people who are willing just to rob for a coat. And he damn near stabbed us, by the way. It wasn't like it was just he brandished it. Like he meant it. So yeah, Jesus. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, I think if that ever happened to me, I'd just be like, "Cool, man, here you go."
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I did. It was pretty much that. It was
it's not worth it.
Yeah, here you go. Take whatever you want. I can't run, and I couldn't run because he grabbed me. So it wasn't like I had a chance to run away because they always say just run, and I would have done. I was legged it. There's no way. I could hear him wheeze. There's no way he was going to catch me. But yeah, what a day.
No, I always think if I ever got mugged, I don't think they wouldn't take your house keys. They can take my wallet, literally couldn't care. It cost £10 to get a new license and all my cards could just get frozen. The chances are he'll probably take my phone.
Yeah, I don't want that.
But I'm clever enough that if he took my phone, I just run up to the next stranger with an iPhone and ask them if I can use the Find My iPhone app and close it and freeze it.
Oh, that's clever. That's a really good idea, actually. That's a really good idea.
I highly recommend setting it up. It works off Mac as well.
So I use it from time to time because I'm clumsy and I'll lose my phone. But I didn't realize that you could. Oh, of course, because you can just sign into your iCloud account on their app, can't you? For that moment.
Yeah, you just log in on that Find My iPhone thing, and it'll give you all your Apple devices, and then you can just freeze them, send them out signals, locate it. Find My iPhone's amazing.
Oh, here's one tip actually that I learned recently that's really good. On your iPhone, on the new iOS, if you swipe down to control panel while your screen's locked, you can set it to airplane mode. You should disable that in your settings so that if someone does take your phone, for example, they can't just swipe down, put it in airplane mode, so that you can't find it on Find My iPhone.
Oh my God, I didn't.
From the lock screen, so you can change that. Yeah,
I'll change that later. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I stumbled across it in just a YouTube rabbit warren I went down, and some person was saying, top 10 things to do on a new iPhone, and that was one of them. I thought, very good.
Yeah, I'm taking airplane mode off that. I didn't even think about that. Huh.
And I wonder how many
Weird.
people have been caught out by that, because that seems like such an obvious thing to do.
Yeah.
Because you walk around and you just assume that, well, it's an iPhone, no one's going to nick it because it's useless. Well, actually, if they can take the parts out of it and sell it to, I can totally imagine someone taking your iPhone out of your hands and then running up to a, a somewhat sketchy phone repair place, and they'll just dismantle it in 10 minutes and then,
Yeah. And just sell the battery, sell the case, sell
Yeah.
the metal. Also, I've heard on a couple podcasts when they were talking about iPhones and stuff and how encrypted they are, apparently the encryption fails once you're in certain countries, like deep middle of nowhere countries.
It
The encryption it fails if it's in a different country.
What do you mean the encryption of your
this-
data or the call?
This is the thing. The phone itself, the iCloud like locking system,
Right.
like the encryption on that starts failing when it goes out of certain countries. So you can ship, if someone nicks your phone, they can ship it to like some third world place, and it's much easier to get into it than it is in the UK, basically.
That's terrifying. I wonder what the mechanism is there that does that, because
Yeah,
if
you'd
the,
think-
if
I
the
didn't-
device is encrypted, then so be it. I wonder if it's because it's all tied into cloud and the internet, if it's got an insecure or an unstable internet connection, if they sacrifice some element of the security as a consequence of that.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that to believe, because it was just one podcast I heard that from, and I
Right.
thought that would be a pretty big deal. Like
Yeah.
that would be a notable deal. Like, weirdly, Apple actually. So this is completely different. Actually, this is to do with iPhones. But Tim Cook posted a photo of him in China with Sony this week,
Right.
and it was at the Sony campus thing.
Was it a fake
And he was-
Sony?
No, it was basically Tim just saying, for the first time ever, Apple never like post anything about who they work with or a partnership with or where they get sensors, and like they wouldn't go, oh, we're working with Intel, like this is really good. But for the first time ever, he went, oh, I'm here at Sony because we've been having a really good partnership with Sony and their sensors for the last 10 or 15 years, just like, making it obvious. And when you take iPhones apart, you can see there's a Sony. If you take all of it apart and you look at the camera sensors, you can see the Sony logo on it. It's a Sony sensor. But because he posted that, obviously the reason he did it is probably because there's rumors of them working together to put something mental in for the VR stuff that they're coming up with.
Yeah.
So he posted that, but instead of people going, ooh, like VR stuff, they went, Apple's admitted that they use Sony sensors for the last 10 years without telling anyone. It's like, so their screens are definitely not made by Apple. But
Yeah, sure. This happens all the time.
Yeah, it's such a stupid thing.
Oh, God. I'm a big fan of Sony sensors. I do think there's definitely a pink problem on some of their professional cameras, like the Sony. I've used the FS5, FS7 a load, and they're pink. The images come out pink all the time.
Yeah. So weirdly, like I only know slightly what you mean, but like when you compare it to any Canon, especially back in the 5D Mark II, Mark III times, and when Sony brought out the A series, A7, 1, 2, 3, people would notice that the colors were completely different. So yeah, I know what you mean. They'd always say that Sony is a lot pinker and Canon's a lot greener.
So I wonder what it is about different video manufacturers, the sensor makers that make their color profile so different. I know that the Exmor series sensor is a tremendous sensor, and one of the advantages it had was I can't remember the terminology precisely, but I think it was called something like backplane lighting or something, where the wires that connected individual pixels to the master bus that takes data away off to the image processor were behind the sensitive photo cells, not in front of them. And that's a big deal because it means, or alongside them. And the reason why that's important is, and you'd think that'd be obvious, but for reasons that are far beyond my ability to understand, the intricacies of, like quantum level wiring at this point, that made the sensitivity even higher. And it's no surprise that iPhones are as good as they are at night. And it's now that I know they've got Sony, I didn't know they had Sony sensors, but one of the things that I really like about Sony is their tremendous low light sensitivity. It's amazing. It's amazing. That Sony A7 II you gave me is, Jesus, it's unbelievably powerful.
Yeah,
unbelievably.
The R2 is really good, and that's not even the best one. Like the A7S from 2014, like that could shoot at 100,000 ISO and be clean, and it could do 400,000 ISO, which is better than your eyes, but it was super grainy. And then since then they've had the A7S2, A7S3, and I think A7S4 is now out. Which is like a it's 20 megapixel, so much lower pixel density than the A7R range, because that's based on photography, not video.
Yeah.
And yet that is just a powerhouse for like low light. It's just nuts.
Where do you think it's going to go? Because it feels like there's going to be a convergence at some point where all this technology, it seems like it's heading somewhere. And I guess from a conceptual perspective, from my view, it's heading towards a place where the camera quality is just so good that it's indistinguishable from cinema. It's indistinguishable from real life. I mean, we've had photorealistic and we've got cameras now in our phones that are so good that it almost defeats the purpose of having a standalone DSLR. Like I remember my dad carrying around a film camera. I remember that, and to see 35mm blown up was just beautiful. And then, you and I lived through the digital sort of revolution, if you like, that transformation where I remember when the Arri Alexa came out, and one of the things they were beating on about was how it had similar or better signal to noise and latitude than film. And that was a big deal. That was a huge deal. And it wasn't the only digital camera that had that capability at the time. But I remember just reading about the press and thinking, Jesus, that is remarkable. Because, I mean, you have to look at the size of the thing. It weighs, 10, 15 kilos or something, and makes a racket when you turn it on. And, it's hot. It's got fans on it. And all of that technology and effort. And that was state of the art at the time, just to mimic film, which has been which has been the staple for hundreds of years. And now we've got multiple sensors, multiple lenses in our camera phones that are unparalleled. I mean, it seems to be the case I think that we'll see iPhones going down from 3 lenses back to 1 again. I think when the sensors are so high resolution and the optics are sufficiently advanced, there'll be no need to distinguish between a macro, a standard quote unquote, and a telephoto. You won't need to have separate lensing and separate sensors. It'll be one sensor again. That's what I suspect. But
yeah, I think like it's crazy with iPhone. I keep saying iPhone because just so everyone knows, I've never had an Android in my life. I've always had iPhones, and I just know how to work them. So I just never bothered changing. And I like Apple. I think they're quite a cool company. Hence why I'm such an Apple fanboy. But like with Apple, they decided to change their phones a few ways. They had a 2 megapixel camera once for a few years. They updated that to a 4, then a 5, then a 7, and then an 8 megapixel. The 8 megapixel hung around for 4 years, and they were kind of old tech at that point. Then they brought out the 12 megapixel one, which is the one that has just started slowly moving away from, but you can get it in almost all the phones apart from the Pro 14, which has the 48 megapixel, which is mental. But that 12 megapixel sensor they're using has been the same one since iPhone 8, I think, which means it's been around for 7 or 8 years. And it's gone from being a usable camera just with that old sensor to being very, very good HDR, 4K, slow motion, like everything can go through that sensor, and it's pretty good low light for a camera that big. And it's the same sensor that's been around for 5 years, 6 years, which is nuts.
So do you think then because megapixels used to be the thing that everyone banged on about, and for good reason, because I think that was like an indicator, wasn't it? That was the acid test, how much how much pixel real estate do you have, and that was
Yeah.
sort of like the benchmark, wasn't it? But
I
do
know.
you think, because what's the current megapixel? 24,
No, so I've got 12
12.
on my 12 Pro.
So what's
Your
on the 13?
Pros, yours is 12 as well, but I think the new ones are, I want to say 18 and one 48 megapixel camera.
Right, wow.
But I could be
On
wrong.
the
It might be
14, there's a
12.
48 megapixel camera.
The 14 Pro has the main camera, the 20 mil or 18 mil, whatever it is a 48 megapixel camera that will shoot some nut stuff.
Like
it can
8K?
do ridiculous stuff. I think it can do 6K. I'm not quite sure
Good
if it can
God.
do 8. Because Apple are always slightly behind, but when they end up bringing it in, it's done the Apple way, which is like something special. They try and believe, well, they're just slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's nuts. The lens is nuts. Like, look into it later.
Do you know who makes the lenses? Is it Zeiss or is it Apple's own?
Oh, the lenses? I don't know. I know the sensors are Sony. I can't imagine the lenses being that. I know they're special, but they're probably not. I don't think it's Zeiss. I think Zeiss would make it more clear. Like the Zeiss is a bit more like of a collaboration they would want. Like when they do, who was it they were doing Zeiss lenses for on the phone, and they had to call it the Sony or whatever it's called Zeiss.
Yeah.
And they had to have Zeiss on it. I think I had a Zeiss thing at one point, and it had Zeiss written on the back. I think they only let them do it if they put their name on it. So it's probably it's probably Sony, to be fair.
I did always like the autofocus and the optical image stabilization. We had one of the oldest cameras that we ever had was a Sony EX1R, and that was a great camera. That was the de facto standard broadcast camera for ENG. I loved that camera, and it was only HD, full HD, nothing fancy about it. But one thing that they were really good with, that they had 3 sensors. They had a red, green, and blue, and a prism. So although it wasn't the most light sensitive camera in the world, the color accuracy was amazing because the pixels could actually line up. And this is something that you would find on smaller sensors, is that when you looked at the chroma subsampling, and if you zoomed in, you'd see a softness, a natural softness that you could never defeat in the image. And that was because the red, green, and blue pixels were all side by side. Whereas what Sony were able to do with their Exmor sensor lineup and this particular camera was that they used a prism to diffract to separate the light out, and then they would just marry up the red, green, and blue. They'd stack them all up in post-processing, and so you had this insanely sharp image that was very color accurate because they broke it out into RGB. And the other thing that I really liked about that camera was its ease of use, because it was so easy to use. And the image stabilization was second to none. It was best in class. In my opinion, it was best in class for handheld. You could do telephoto work that was great. Actually, speaking of telephoto work, I saw it. There's another YouTube channel that I saw where they looked into, when you see big broadcast cameras in studios and they have that huge box lens on it. Have you heard of the specs of some of those lenses and why they cost like £200,000?
No, I assume the amount of glass in it.
Well, I mean, that's definitely one of them. But so typically these big things, I'm sure I'm getting some of this wrong, but they would go from a 35 mil equivalent, about 12 mil, all the way up to about 1800 mil. And they could slow gradual zoom, they could fast zoom, they let an enormous amount of light through. So I think the T-stop equivalent was like 0.3, or that's like, I don't know what f-stop equivalent that is, but they're insanely fast. And when you see a camera go from being able to focus and zoom comfortably at someone speaking right in front of it or holding a hand right up to it, and then zooming way off into the distance to follow a golf ball that's several hundred yards away, and you can make the golf ball this big on the screen, you just think
it blows my mind when they actually manage to track that. Like whenever you watch when you watch basketball or like football or something, and they've got like a decent wide shot from probably like 300 foot away of a guy running, playing football, or like basketball, someone dribbling along. And then as he shoots, it just zooms in on a ball and just follows the ball all the way up in the air.
Center track.
It stops perfectly.
Yeah,
and
focus is perfectly sharp.
I'm just like, how do you do that? I'd love to watch a GoPro attached to the camera facing the cameraman to see what his eyes are like, because they must be just like...
But just bored.
knowing where.
And repetition,
bored.
mate. That's all he does. That's all he does all day long, is he just goes home and tracks stuff. I always think that if you were a Steadicam operator, you must see the world in a different way, because I think you'd walk like a chicken. You'd walk and you'd want your whole world to be
super smooth.
Yeah,
You'd walk like a ninja everywhere. You'd just be creeping around everywhere.
Sometimes
like
I do
shopping
that
like this.
because you've used cameras quite a bit. Sometimes I'm guilty of this. I'll walk around the house and I'll imagine, if this was a movie, how would I frame it? And sometimes I walk as if I'm a Steadicam. I will do that because I'm really sad. But
Yeah, I remember when I first got the Ronin and had it plugged in, all I would do is just walk around filming it. It'd be useless because it wouldn't actually go anywhere and I wouldn't use it, but it would be just fun, just watching life through the screen and seeing how smooth you can make it, and see if you can crawl through from one side of the car to through a door, like across the gear stick, out the other door, and see how smooth you can make it. Going upstairs, I used to just run upstairs and back downstairs, seeing how smooth it could go. Any excuse to follow someone around with it and see if I can keep them in focus and keep them in shot, which I never could. I'd be rubbish at focusing at the same time. And
I tell you what,
sucked.
Speaking of Ronin, the 4D is, I think, in my opinion, one of the greatest looking cameras and the most insane bits of technology I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it.
That's nuts, right? It's quite old now. It's a year old, but
quite old. Quite old.
It's a year old. It's probably going to be worth half the amount. But yeah, that's a nuts camera. That's so cool. And you can mount it to like a big ass gimbal. Not get gimbal. You can mount it to a big ass drone or crane or car.
Didn't think of that.
Yeah, like an Inspire or something, or whatever the next biggest one is. But yeah, have four-axis stabilization, which is nuts.
I think it's the way to go. Definitely the way to go. No need for Steadicam. If I was Steadicam, I'd be scared. I'd be really scared. I think I'd have to start competing in that space, because I think there's just no way you can. If you don't need to wear a full body suit and all that weight and all that balancing and blah 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 and all that training and getting it right.
Yeah,
you just pick it up. Because I remember the Easy Rig made a big difference for a lot of broadcast camera operators, because
was that the one? That the one with
that big jib thing arm over
it? A cable, yeah.
Yeah,
that was cool.
I think they're just pussies, though. I think it's just for people who are weak.
Oh, it takes off a lot of the weight. And I imagine when you're running around with not a 5D Mark II, but if you're running around with a pretty massive cine lens with a cine camera, going on a gimbal with the gimbal attached, you probably want some extra restraint.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I remember the first bit of stabilizing like hardware I got back when I had my 5D Mark II. I had a Glide Cam HD 2000, which is
I remember the Glide Cam.
A weighted gyro on a handle.
You just hold it.
Yeah, and you had to adjust it with screws to bring it back millimeters and sideways millimeters, do this length. And I never said, as soon as I bought it, it was like, make sure you do this. There's tons of YouTube videos. I would just be so frustrated and wanting to go straight out that I'd just be like, kind of, that'll do. I hold it there, see if it does this, and it's like you got to hold it horizontal and go 1, 2, 3, and it should go 3 seconds to get to there. Mine would be like 1, 2, and then start pivoting, and I'll be like, cool, sounds good, that's stable.
Great, just hold it.
Go out, and all the footage would be stable, but it would just be like it's flying. It's just like this.
It'd be like on a boat, just wavy.
Yeah. So I'd have to stick it through Adobe or something and make it ridiculously badly stabilized on top of the Glide Cam.
You'd lose about 80% of your pixels.
Yeah, totally. And I was fine with that. I was like, yeah, cool, Glide Cam, bro.
Yeah. I think
that's £600.
Mate, they're not cheap. I remember seeing an advert for a Glide Cam. I bought one. I did the same as you, but I bought one that had a vest and a little arm. And I remember that. And that was, I just got covered in grease immediately, and it was just shocking. And it worked all right. It was okay, but it wasn't heavy enough. And so everything would just have a rock to it. Everything would just sway.
That rock was so annoying. So mine, you could buy a fixture thing that would be a arm support that would go along here.
Yeah.
That would attach to your arm, and then you'd be able to stick it in a hole and kind of do that, and that would take a lot of the weight off you.
Yep.
But I mean, it wouldn't help with your skill of balancing it, because at that time it was genuinely a skill. Unlike now, where you can get a gimbal for your phone, you can get a tiny little DJI. I can't even remember, Ronin whatever it's called, RS2S
Yeah.
carbon fiber thing, you can literally put the camera on it, move it back fairly straight, as long as it sits straight, click calibrate, and it'll just go beep, beep, calibrated.
Amazing.
Whereas back then you had to measure it, and like if you forgot to put a battery in, like God help you, or like if you like forgot to take the lens cap off, it would just be like
it just slowly
straight
move.
away just from a gram. Yeah, that was the worst. Or change your focal point.
What a pain in the
zoom.
ass. Oh
would
yeah,
change
because you'd shift the glass backwards and
Yeah.
forwards. Fucking thing. They need to. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But thank God, man, there were people making effort at least. You know, and this and what I love about the Ronin 4D is I think that it's going to improve cinema immensely now, because I think you can definitely see. I see it a lot in television documentaries in particular, where you can see that they're using a gimbal because it's got that very distinctive I want to say like Z-axis wobble. There's a movement to it where you can tell they're using a gimbal, and it really disrupts that suspension of disbelief, and so you're just flung straight into the production element again. You think, oh, okay, well, they could have done that better.
Yeah,
and it's
but
a
like
shame.
the more we go on in the years, though, the less you see that. Like the mistakes and things, you just don't see as much. And I think some of the riggers out there can rig a camera so well and do like a multi-set one shot thing. Like you see all those behind the scenes of like a guy on a steady rig going along, shooting, and then holding onto a car on roller skates, going along and attaching it to a cable so it goes up like 2 floors to join the character going up the stairs. And like you see those and you're like, that's insane. And it looks like one perfect smooth shot.
It's amazing.
And yet back then it would be so difficult to make one dolly shot look one glide cam shot look smooth.
Yeah, you can't even walk from point A to point B without there being
6 times walking up and down stairs trying to get it right.
Oh, and not a single one of them is any good.
No,
they're all useless.
I decided the next thing I'm going to buy, because I like doing the travel vlog thing. I actually just finished one. That I am going to buy a little DJI Osmo one for the phone.
I like the Osmos actually. They're nice.
They're like 60 quid for a second-hand one.
Nice.
I'm going to buy one of those.
Where did you? What vlog did you do? Which one did you do it for?
So when I went to France in July.
Yep.
I did a part 1 that I edited straight away as soon as I came back, and then I stopped halfway because I was just busy. I think that's when I just started doing this room. So I stopped and then I forgot to. And then as we were kind of looking at doing the reels and stuff for this, I noticed that my iMovie, because I'm worried about losing like the thing that's already open, I decided to finish that really quickly before I started editing reels.
Oh, I see.
So I finished that, uploaded it. But it's really good.
Nice.
I think it's fun.
Nice,
definitely.
Man.
Go check it out. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, put a link on here.
Yes,
yeah,
link
click
in
on the
the description.
Yes, and on the video.
Like, comment, subscribe.
How many followers have you got?
250 or something.
Wow, mate,
over a 20-year period.
That's not bad. That's 200 dedicated. Well, they probably just lost. You're just lost in the subscriptions now. They can't unsubscribe from you.
No, it's going to be people that just liked MX5 content.
Yeah.
And now they don't get that. So.
I on my channel, my personal one, I've got about 170, 180 followers, and that's almost all thanks to me uploading a Bon Iver video where Taylor Swift walks on stage.
Yeah, I saw that. I looked into that. You're getting a lot of views on that.
It's 300,000 views and growing now. Thank God, bless her. God bless her for getting on stage and doing that. That was a great show.
Thanks, Swifty.
Thanks, Swifty. That was a great show, though. That was amazing. That was really good.
It looked good. I'm not much of a Bon Iver fan, but I like Taylor Swift.
I like Taylor Swift. I do. In fact, we should put that in the thumbnail for this video. We should put Taylor Swift in big letters, and we'll hopefully attract some fans.
Yeah, and a photo of her on a podcast.
Yeah. We'll put her in the box on the bottom left. Yeah,
featuring Taylor Swift. We'll go so well.
Shamelessly,
there'll be so many dislikes. Clickbait.
Yeah,
these guys don't know how to film a podcast properly.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Hey, I think we're filming it all right. I think we've done well so far.
I think we are. And this time you'll actually have HD footage of me.
Yeah, hopefully. I need to figure out a way of getting the footage from you to me, though. I need to find out.
Well, now it's HD. It should be like an eighth of the size compared to 7 gigs a video. So if it's
just
2
delete
gigs,
the
at
other
least I
ones.
can send
Or
it.
what you could do actually with the other ones, if you feel like it. No, that's too late. They're in the past. Let's forget. Yeah. So
they're in the past. Hopefully you've been getting audio absolutely fine, because I did not record audio today.
Yeah, audio is really clear today.
Cool,
Hopefully
cool.
I'm just double check my OBS now to make sure I am recording it, and I am. Yeah, I am recording it. That'd be so
good.
sad. Yeah.
Good. Well, it's been probably an hour now.
Well, I'm cool to keep going if you are. It depends how long you've got.
I started work at 9 o'clock and I've sent 2 emails.
Oh, geez, you need to catch up on that. You need to just schedule some emails in your outbox, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a bit of work. So, but yeah, we'll try and do another one this week, maybe.
Sounds good. I've got to come in again this week, so yeah, I'll hopefully not just be sat in the lobby where I am right now, where people are walking past looking at me like, "Who the fuck is this poser?"
I'll probably still be here, but
Okay.
if we do one, if we do another one this week, and then I'll be at home for 4 days, so maybe I'll be in Somerset for a week.
Let's do a face to face.
Should we do a face to face?
Let's. You can come here. Come to Hartham. That's what we can come. We'll do it here. That way. I'm not at home and we're not going to get disturbed. We can just come straight here.
Okay, cool. Let's do that.
Brilliant. Well, it's been nice talking to you, Hens. Until next time, man.
Nice talking
Look
to you.
after yourself. Bye, everybody. See you later.
Bye,
Hens.
everybody. Like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah. See you later, mate.